Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for coming over to Out on a Limb with Gabby Allen. Hi. All right. So I'm just going to let you know right now that I have Carrie Jacobs with us. A, make sure you say her first name right because it's Carrie, as if you grew up outside Philadelphia. B, there's lots of laughter in your future, near future. I want you to make sure that you are like quick taking drinks so that you don't snort it out of your nose, because we cannot be liable for that kind of stuff. Nope. So as I explained to Carrie earlier, I only ask one question and we're gonna jump and do the thing. So Carrie, what is it that you do and how do you do it?
Okay, I write small town contemporary rom-coms and I have no idea. It just happens.
Okay, this is a good place to start.
It's like magic, the angels speak to me and
okay,
boom, there's a book.
Well, I mean, that does happen too sometimes. Sometimes you're grabbing things out of the atmosphere. Sometimes you're just waiting. I have never, though, gone to sleep and woken up with more words than I had before I stopped the night before. I kind of feel like I need to bring in the little elves that made the shoes for the cobbler.
Right.
I need that. That. Maybe we need to ask for that next time. Maybe Christmas.
maybe, or if I can find like a genie with a magic lamp or something, that would be amazing.
Right. I'd totally be on board with you on that one. So if you don't know how it's done, do you plan out anything or do you sit down? Okay, I'll take that as a no. And so you pretty much sit down and you just start writing.
I sit down and start writing. Okay. And part of the reason I don't know where any of it comes from is because I never had one of these moments where it's like, 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to be a writer.
Right.
I've always been a writer. When I was pre being able to write, I would actually dictate stories to my mom and she would write down these stories.
Do you have them still?
And I have one of them. Only one of them has survived the years. And it was a frog named Tog. And spoiler alert, he lived on a log. So
are you serious?
Yes, I am serious.
My God.
And my mom would, she like drew a little frog and she drew the little log and it was it was amazing.
Yeah, I love you even more than I did before. Like the love was pretty high. I think we've now hit a ceiling. We might have to build an extra floor. That is adorable.
So I have always told stories and then I've always written stories. And in my high school yearbook, they had, the what's your future career?
Right.
And I put novelist.
Okay.
And so now high school was,
well, we don't need
a little bit ago. Little bit ago. And finally, here I am. So
that's awesome.
I do not plan any of my stories, which is really, really weird because I am so anal retentive in other aspects. Let me show you.
Okay.
This is my production schedule for next year.
Okay.
It is color coded with my dates. I actually have 22 and 23 mapped out.
Okay.
So it's like, I'm going to have a book launching next June, but I don't know what it's going to be. I haven't started it yet.
So, well, that's very interesting. So you're very organized when it comes to the way what happens after it's done. But as far as doing it, do you think that's a balance for you?
Probably.
Yeah. It's hard to be that organized about everything.
Yeah.
So, and there's a creativity aspect that goes into, I mean, obviously you use creativity to choose the colors to color code, but I think it's a slightly different kind of creativity to put together a small town contemporary romance.
And if we're being completely honest, a lot of that color coded creativity is the brainchild of procrastination.
Okay.
I have other things to do. So, I'm supposed to be revising a book right now. So I think I will map out the next 3 years of my career.
That
right
is
now. Gotta be done right now. Right after I finish scrubbing the baseboards.
Right. Yes. Yes, and rearranging the kitchen,
yes,
and looking for all of your Tupperware lids.
And putting, all of the bowls by sizes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the glasses in the cupboard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, isn't that necessary? Yeah. We are so silly. But the thing is that, and one of the things that I've loved about doing this podcast is encouraging people that there is many ways to do this, as there are people who do it. Yes. And so I know you and I have written together before, not on the same book, but like in the same physical space. And you write and then print and then edit, but you don't always necessarily use the edits that are on the paper.
I mostly do.
You do. Okay.
It ends up, it's funny sometimes because I'm just sitting here like right now. Oh, look, I've got visuals for all of your.
I love it.
This is how I revise on paper, and I make all of my notes.
Right.
And sometimes when I'm like really in the thick of it revising, I forget to turn the page and look. Oh. But then when I go back and look, I'm like, oh yeah, that was the note I made. I didn't even have to say it.
I love it. That's well, and it's, I think, for me, I am all about getting the story out first. The writing part sometimes can be harder for me. I would much rather edit than write on most days. There are days where I'm like, give me the creativity. I'm so tired of like keying in a comma here and a T there and change this sentence a little bit. I'm bored out of my mind. But for the most part, I really do like to edit. So I tend to allow myself to kind of free for all. Now I do plan to some extent, simply because I do cozy mysteries and I need to like know who's dead. Although there are people who don't, but I personally need to know who's dead and who did it. And then I can move towards my end goal. So do you know your characters when you start? Like, do you have names and kind of backstories for them at all? Or do you literally sit down and you're like, it was a dark and stormy night?
I know their names. I couldn't start without writing their names.
Okay.
I look at them as I am meeting people. So like, I have just met this character, like my last book right there. Her name is Sarah. So I knew we have got Sarah, and then I'm like, okay, so we've got the love interest, which, writing romance is kind of nice because I got to have the woman, I got to have the man. Right. And, I know that at the end we're going to end up together. I just have no idea how we're going to get there. But I know them, and I know a little bit of their backstories, but not a lot. It's like if you just meet someone, right? I know, like if I meet you, I know what you look like. I know your name. I know that you're very sweet. You're very funny. You love to laugh. So I know these things about you. And then, a little bit later, I find out, out about your husband and your kid and, little things like that. So I learn as I go. Okay. That's the same way I get to know my characters.
So do you then have to mess with the beginning of the book when you're editing because you found things out later on that you hadn't realized in the beginning?
Not really.
Awesome.
Because usually I know just enough that I know how she would behave. Okay. So nothing really goes that far off the rails. Okay. So that's awesome. And you chose small town rom-com or small town contemporary romance, sorry. But they are funny. Yes. And because that's the thing that you like to read, that's the thing that you wanted to write. It is my happy place. It's what I love to read. I love Hallmark movies. I want all the happy. That's what I want. I don't want, okay. And I should preface that by saying I also read some really dark stuff. I read dark romance. I read Stephen King. I read Dean Koontz. I read, Laura Kay. I read all of the things. I read mysteries. One of my favorite authors is James Rollins, and he has like military. So I read all the things, but writing romance is my happy place.
Yes.
And so that's where I want to spend most of my time. So
right.
And I can't not be a smartass, so
right.
I have to do the rom-com.
I am with you on that one. So with you on that one. And I do the same thing. Like I don't necessarily write your typical alpha heroes. That doesn't mean that I don't like reading them. It's just that in my mind, the way that my imagination works, I don't write them well. And it's very interesting to me because there's this whole philosophy in life sometimes where everybody thinks you need to fix your flaws. And when I'm writing, I would say pretty much every single heroine I've ever written has flaws. Will end up enjoying their flaws, embracing their flaws, working with their flaws. I do not expect them to change. If there's something big that you need to, like if you're constantly hurting yourself or something emotionally, that should change. But I don't start out writing those kinds of heroines. So most of mine are just, they're flawed people and they end up still being flawed at the end. But so I tend to write to my strengths. So if I'm not good at something, I'm not going to go try to be good at that particular thing if it's a specific genre type thing. I mean, look, if you're not good at telling stories, then yes, please go take some classes and figure out how to do that. But for the most part, if you know your story structure and you just aren't a suspense writer, you don't have to be. Go find the thing that you do really, really well and just do that better. I have never really understood why you would want to be good at everything.
No. Who has time for that?
Right. And I mean, you want to leave room for other people. I mean, if if you're the best at everything ever, then there's no room. I do it as a service to others.
Exactly.
Oh my God. So far you have four out. And you just spoke at Lady Jane's salon the other day, and that was so much fun. I loved hearing them. And you do your own covers.
I do.
And so was that something that you chose to do from the beginning because you liked all of that, or did you imagined yourself self-publishing at the beginning, or did you have like a different path that you ended up taking?
My original path, I was planning to get an agent and go to one of the top 5 and get $1 million advance and just spend the rest of my days writing my books in my fully financed beach house, because of all these checks that we're going to be rolling in. That was plan A.
Right. Yes. I think pretty much that's plan A for everyone. It's so funny to me when I tell anybody I do have a full-time job, and they're like, but you write so many books. And I'm like, yeah. And they pay like 17 cents a piece from Kensington. That's why I like the self-published books, because at least I make a little more money.
Right. Then you get 90 cents a piece.
I know, right? It's so awesome. But I mean, and I love writing for Kensington, and there are different pros and cons to every single way of doing this. Kensington cannot pivot the way that I can pivot when I am doing self-publishing. If there was something that you wanted to do in self-publishing, like something that seemed to be kind of ramping up, and you could take the story that you had and kind of ratchet it to the side so that it addresses whatever, you could have that out in a month or two, whereas that's 2 years down the line for Kensington. So do you like the indie publishing?
I do. And I think it's because, I've got control.
Yes.
And so,
and color code.
Sorry, I really, really, really like rabbit holes.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
that's my favorite. So
I can't tell you how many times. Yeah, how many times I've said that. I'm like, well, so going all the way back to the original question 25 minutes ago, let's answer that one.
So I spent probably 8 years querying agents and traditional publishers. And I kept getting the same feedback, like, hey, this is great, but I just signed an author that's doing the same thing. I, already have too many, on my list. I, blah, blah, blah. The writing's really good, just not right for me, blah, 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 blah. And finally, I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Right.
So I joined Writers Organization with people who were publishing independently and were doing it well and successfully. And after a little while, I'm like, I can do that.
Yes.
So then I spent all of my energy then learning how to do this. And then finally I'm like, all right, it's time, just throw caution to the wind. And so that was Drunk on a Plane came out. And as far as the cover, I had a robust budget of $0 to work with. Thankfully, I am so happy for the illustrated cover craze, because I can't do Photoshop to save my life.
Right.
So I found it's actually another Adobe product, and of course Adobe makes Photoshop, but it's Illustrator.
Yes.
And it's basically the illustrated equivalent of Photoshop.
Yeah.
So I went in and I learned. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And then so I made my first cover, and then I'm like, all right, that wasn't so bad. So yes, I can do that. So then I took some classes and stuff, and to work with Illustrator better. So so I do my own covers because can't afford not to.
It's so fun. Well, one of the only reasons that I don't do my own covers is that I have a kid in art college.
Yes.
And quite frankly, they can make those for me. Although I do still pay for them. Let's put that out there.
Yes.
I do not expect free labor just because I'm paying for college. I do still give the money for the cover. But your covers are so very cute.
Thank you.
And very indicative of what's inside. Yes. And I think that is it's one of the things that I love the most about doing the self-publishing arm of what I do, is that there are things that I'm like, I want that on a cover, and good luck getting that sometimes if someone else is in charge of that aspect. And then you get to approve it and say, that actually turned out pretty well. Or, ooh, we better maybe start that one over again. I'm not sure what happened there, but that was not my intention. And then you also get to price them the way that you feel they need to be priced. And you're cutting out several pieces that you have to wait for when you're in a different line.
Yeah.
I think, and yours are also available as ebooks. Is that correct? You do?
Absolutely. Yep.
And ebooks. Yeah.
And they are available wide. I'm not exclusive to Amazon. So they're on Barnes and Noble, and awesome. Apple Books is actually a big outlet for me.
That's awesome.
Okay. And Google Books.
Isn't that always funny? You get a check and you're like, how did you find me?
Yeah.
I mean, thank you. But like, seriously, how did you find me? What were you looking at that made you, did you type in my name?
Right.
Did you type in drunk on? And then you were like, oh, look, there's a book called Drunk On. I was looking about, being drunk on Goldschlager, but this book looks cute too. Oh my God. Well, it's such a crapshoot anyway. Yes. I was just on a podcast yesterday, and I was talking about, look, do I want to make money at this? Yes, I do. I spend a lot of time, a lot of my energy, a lot of my emotions putting this together. I would expect to pay somebody for a painting. I would expect to pay somebody for a game that I play or whatever. So I would like to make money, but that is not, to me, that doesn't quite hit the same chord as knowing that people are picking up your book and allowing it them to take them away. from whatever's going on, and I know your kind of books, rom-coms, are, if I'm having a moment, that's what I'm going for. I don't want to be depressed. I don't really want to be scared. I don't necessarily want to be overly intrigued because sometimes I just don't really want to have to work at it. I want to pick up a book. I want to see the people at the beginning. I know there are two of them. I know at the end they're going to get together, and I am just going to sit here and enjoy the way that works. Watch them stumble over things, know they're going to get back up, be excited about how they get back up. I've had people say, well, romances they're just so predictable. And I'm like, well, that depends on what kind of reader you are, because they can be unpredictable, even if they're a trope. So do you use tropes? Or is that something that you don't really think about too much?
Probably. But it's one of those things like theme, where it's some people start with a theme and I'm like, heck, I don't know. I mean, it's a romance. I guess the theme is love conquers all, because So the tropes, I don't intentionally go for any particular tropes, but I have discovered with with Drunk on a Plane, Caller Number 9, and Luck of the Draw, I have kind of steered towards forced proximity.
Yes.
Where, my hero and my heroine are just kind of stuck together for whatever reason and have to deal with that.
I love those though. And again, some people are like, tropes. And I'm like, look, it's the same thing as a cliche. All right. It exists because there are enough people who love it that they like that. Like, I love forced proximity stuff because I'm like, ooh, this is going to be wild, because you can tell that they're not into each other at the beginning, and yet they kind of are. Yeah. And so you're waiting for that breaking point, and that's what you're going to get. And I think, it's always takes me aback when somebody says, well, somebody already wrote that. And I'm like, yeah, like 40 million people have already written that. But everybody's
Shakespeare has probably already written it.
Yes. But you will put your own spin on it. I call it a filter. So everything that's happened to you in life kind of weaves this filter. Yeah. And when something new happens, it gets sent through that filter and it comes out. Different things will affect different people. If a baseball is coming near me, I will probably just watch it fall to the ground. Some people will put their hand out. Some people will duck, because it depends on what has happened to you previously with baseball. I know that's a really simple one, but it's something. Right. And so you have your own filter, but then your characters also have their own filters that might be partially you, but it's still going to be different because it's them. Yep. So I would read 7 forced proximity books in a row if I wanted to, because they're all going to be different characters and different scenarios.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't, I never think about theme. If somebody says, well, what's the theme of your book? I'm like, I don't know. It's there at the end. Like,
I don't know.
That is not something.
I had a traumatic experience with the whole theme and literary dissection and stuff back in high school. And we were doing Moby Dick.
Oh no.
And I'm just, it's like, okay, well, what does this represent? And what does this represent? And blah, 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 blah. And me being me, who can't shut up, couldn't shut up back then either. I'm just like, is it possible it's just a fish? and apparently the answer is no, it is not just a fish. It represents whatever governmental agency or social construct of it. I'm just like,
no. And that's one of the reasons that I never even considered like literature, the difference between genre fiction and literature, because I really don't want you to learn anything when you're reading my books. I just want you to be, and if you
do, to have hours of happiness, and just, go away in a better mood and enjoy yourself. No, please don't analyze it. I promise you, if my character is wearing a blue shirt, it is because he is wearing a blue shirt. I promise
grabbed out of the closet.
If he's driving a Mazda, it is just a Mazda. It's I swear.
Yeah, I got you. I did a book club once, and it was like a Zoom book club with I think the Midwest, and they were looking at Ivy Morris Mysteries, which is a set that I started in 2005, and they're like, so the significance of the purple couch, and I was like, oh man, I'm either going to have to try to sound really smart here, or I'm just going to, we're going to go with Misty. So I like purple, and I thought it would be really pretty if she had a purple couch, and they were like, oh. I was like, I don't do that kind of thing on purpose. I love that people do. And I've said this in the middle of any number of podcasts. There are as many readers as there are stories. You will always find someone who wants to read what you want to write. You don't have to write to trends. You don't have to do all the things. But there are certain things that I'm like, no. I will start out, like you said, I start out knowing kind of how she would react, how I would like her to react at the end in a way that gives her growth, but doesn't necessarily change who she is to be more acceptable within society. But that's about as far as we're going. If you want me to come up with some societal, I don't. It was so funny. So I sucked at English. I still got okay grades, but not good at English. I was flying home from a conference once. I get off my plane, and who is walking in front of me except my English teacher from 12th grade. And I was like, oh my God. And so she turns around for something, and she's like, oh. And I said, hello. She was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, coming home from a writers conference. And she's like, what? And I said, I write books now. And she was like, you hated English. And I said, whoa, see, I hated your English. So I gave her a book, and she emailed me and said, I'll give you an A. I'm not giving you an A+, but I will give you an A. Now, what's the theme of this book? And I wrote back and I said, nope, don't have to answer you anymore. Thanks so much for the A. And that was it. I mean, I love that people do that. And I love that some people want to read to put certain things into perspective or whatever, but there's room for all of us. And I just want to be Calgon, which I understand that I just aged myself, but I
got it. So
I know, which is why I love it. But I want to take you away.
Yes.
I really do. There are times that I want to read like super dark books because I'm like, oh, give me the angst. And then there are other times that I'm like, please, I can't take any more angst. Just give me something that brings me joy. And your books do that. So yes, I was like, oh, look at how cute you are. I was reading Drunk on a Plane, and my husband walked by and he's like, what on earth are you? And he's like, and then I forget what part it was, but I was like totally cracking up. And he's like, I think you just woke up the dogs next door. And I was like, good. They should be having an awesome night too. Why not? I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's a beautiful thing because then you know, there are just days where that's what you want. And, and so do you have like a file though of ideas moving forward, like things that you want to try, such as this particular kind of location?
I do actually.
Okay.
because these are all a series. They're all set in Hickory Hollow, but they're all completely standalone.
Right.
And I think that's because I didn't intend for them to be a series when they were individually written. But, you know, for marketing purposes, it's like, oh, guess what? Guess what town you're all from now? So,
yes. But it is nice because people like to come back to see what's going on, but they don't necessarily want to have to read them in a specific order.
Right. And so I am actually planning a spinoff series. Oh. So there will be 2 more standalones that are just Hickory Hollow. Okay. And then I'm doing a Hickory Hollow spinoff. And they are going to be much more interconnected. They will still be standalones. Right. But it's hard moving characters through different books when they weren't originally intended to do that. Yeah. So that's, you know, I kind of struggle with that. I do have a lot of cameos across books, but the spin-off series will be much more interconnected. Okay. So. Okay. And that's as much planning as I do.
Well, and it is nice when you find a town that you like, being able to already have that figured out and not have to reinvent the wheel every single book, you know, because if you're going to be writing small town contemporary romance and it's like here and then it's like 30 minutes to the left and then it's like in a different state, but it's only 45 minutes away, unless there's a very specific reason that you have to do that, there's nothing wrong with keeping them all in one. And then people are like, oh my gosh, there's another one. I have to get that one, you know, and then there's an anticipation of being able to go back. Yep. Yeah. And that way you can.
And here's a little secret for people is Hickory Hollow is actually my hometown, which is like right here in central Pennsylvania. And here's a super, super secret writer's secret. I did that so I didn't have to do a ton of research because I live here. I know what the weather is like in February. I know what the weather is like in July. I know the topography. So there's a lot of stuff you don't realize you would have to research in different locations. Yeah. So yeah. So
I once was going to write one in Montana because my great aunt lives there, and I'm like, I've been there before, and then I'm like, how far is it from that town to, oh my gosh, all right, fine. And I looked up the first like 5 things, and after that I was like, all right, you know what, you're going to central Pennsylvania.
But seriously,
I will make the cows work.
But these days, thank you for Google. It is amazing because okay, not to date myself, but okay. You know, the first book I ever wrote, Google wasn't a thing. Oh, it hadn't even existed. If you wanted to do research, you had to go to the library and do the card catalog, you know, rifle through and I'm telling you, it was not fun. No. And it was not easy. So
although I did like the Dewey Decimal System.
Yes. Yeah. Why did they do away with that?
I don't know. Because that always made me so happy to find what I wanted in the little cards and then go over and I'm like, oh, 483.1. Yes. There you are. It is, and it's hard, you know, when we were starting, you did have to like take an actual book out that was probably published 50 years previously. Yes. And you're like, is that even still there? I mean, I have always done fictionalized towns based on a town that either I live in or I've visited often enough that I feel like I can get kind of the feel for it. And with the Gabby Allen books, there was no way to do that. And I because I can't put a third town on an island with 2 towns. That's a little.
I mean, if you want to really go that way, it's got to be like magic.
Right. Right.
So a wizard came and poof, made another town.
Yes.
It really doesn't work in contemporary small town rom-com.
No, I don't think I want to go with Poofville. I feel a little maybe not on that. But I was like, oh, and so I did a lot of research. I was calling people and I went over there because I was like, well, how far is it? And what does that feel like? Where is everything? Because I had to know. All right, but I'd rather not do that.
Yep.
I like doing fictionalized stuff because then it's like you're over there because that's where I put you.
Exactly. And the one wonderful thing, the best thing about the fictionalized town is
yes.
I live in, I'm not gonna say it because it's a family show, middle of nowhere, we will call it.
Okay.
I have to drive an hour to get to Target.
Oh.
Okay. So I gave my people a Target that's only like 15 minutes away.
Good for you.
So
good for you. You should send the book into the borough and say, see how nicely this would work? Just saying. While you're at it, can you put a Starbucks in the Target too? Because see how nice that would work?
Yes.
You'd have at least one customer.
Yes.
And that, I mean, but that is why I like doing fictionalized, because you can play with things and you can put things where they're not, and no one is going to smack you for it. Or, if you do, I had really thought about using the name of my town that I live in the Tallygraver Mysteries. And I thought, that subway has changed hands like 3 or 4 times on Main Street. And by the time you read my books, well, now it's a crepe place. It's delicious and I love it. But there are business changes that you don't necessarily want to deal with, and you're dating yourself, and especially for me, minor mysteries. Not everybody wants me to kill somebody in their bathroom or
in their establishment.
Except the pizza guy. There's a pizza place over here, and I had gone in and talked to him, and I was like, so hey, can I kill someone in here? And he said, in the basement. And I said, well,
Wait a minute. Would you like to know that this is for a book?
Right. I was like, well, I write books. And he's like, oh, well, then anywhere. I was like, well, I'm never going to the basement with you. If anybody ever gets invited into the basement, don't go. Bad things happen.
And if you do eat there, for the love of God, do not leave a bad Yelp.
Right.
Just don't.
But that's so odd. Like, to me, for genre fiction, you can play with that kind of stuff. You can, and then even more so with independently publishing, because I know I've had to run a couple of things past Kensington and be like, well, would you be willing to do this? And they're like, well, let me see. Oh, yeah. Whereas you can be like, hey, guess what I'm doing? And then you do it. And, there's, like I said, pros and cons to each. I have a small publisher, a big publisher, and I self-publish. So God forbid I don't just do one thing. That's too long of a show to even go into. But, when I think about it like that, I'm like, you can definitely pivot so much faster. And you can also though, stay with what you want, even if it's not as popular as it was when you started.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was at a conference once, and they were talking about, it was a time when, kind of like now, when like the really, really alpha male jerks were in style. And I'm like, I don't write those. And they're like, well, then you might not get published. I said, that's fine. Then I'll wait until the light side of the moon comes back around, and I'll still be writing. But independently publishing, there are still people who want to read them. Even if other people want to read the super dark heroes, there are people looking for books that are like yours.
Absolutely.
And we can provide that. And they should thank us for it.
Yeah, it's the same with all those trends, oh, you hear, oh, vampires are out. So then people are not writing vampire books. And it's like, well, you might as well, because, in 3 or 4 years, vampires are coming back. Yep. They are the undead. They're not going anywhere.
I really want a vampire who starts in like 1980. Like he gets changed in 1980 and everything is 80s stuff for him because that's all he really remembers. I would love to see one in like thigh-high chucks, suspenders.
Yeah. Oh, parachute pants, the whole MC Hammer thing.
Yes. Yes.
With his boom box.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. What if he got turned in 1980, but he didn't, like he got buried and he didn't come back until now. So he would have 40 years that he completely missed out on everything. Oh my gosh, that would be so much fun.
That would be amazing.
We should think about that. Is that even maybe some short stories? Maybe we could rope Jen in and just tell her, hey, come on over. We're writing vampire stories from the 1980s. Come on, you can do this.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
We could make Brianna do it with us too.
Yes.
Although hers, we'd probably have to put at the back. I'm like, stop killing everyone. That's not what I said. Oh, and then she's another one. Like, I love reading her stuff. I would never write that. Sure. And I love reading your stuff. I don't necessarily write romance only anymore because I'm not very good at that. I need an outside story going on, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy all of it. It's just that I'm playing to my strengths, and apparently my strengths involve killing people on the page. We have to put that on the page for it.
Well, the funny part is I write with Brianna a lot, and she writes the super dark stuff, and I write this super light and fluffy stuff. And she's like, "Oh man, what should I do here?" I'm like, "Have them kidnap her dog walker and torture her in the basement." And she's just like, "Who are you?"
You're like, just because I don't write it doesn't mean I don't think it.
Right.
Honest to God. Oh, we're coming up on 45 minutes. Of course we are. What was I thinking? I just looked over and I was like, oh my gosh, I did it again. But this has been so much fun. I am so excited that
this has been a blast.
Good. I am so happy that you were available to do this. I was like, it's Carrie week. I'm so excited. So tell us what's next and where can we find you?
What's next is in March, I will have the 5th Hickory Hollow book coming out.
Nice.
In June, I will have, it's actually a complete standalone. It's not related to Hickory Hollow, so I'm hoping that'll come out. And then the 6th Hickory Hollow will be out in September. And so that is my 2022 schedule. Awesome. And then 2023 will be the Hickory Hollow spinoff. So that is what is up and coming. And I should also mention that if you are interested in looking at my books, there's no sex in my books. So I am clean-ish. That's how I define myself, because there is some very mild language, because sometimes what the hell is the only thing that works. So yes. I have such a hard time that originally when I was writing the traditional only cozies, I'm like, I am not going to have a cop say, you're such a pain in my hiney. I mean, unless there's a very specific reason, like it would have to be a shtick. Right. And some people make it work wonderfully, but I'm like, absolutely not. Pain in my ass. That's what we're doing. That's how it's going to go. But yes, so cleanish. And they're at you, but you still have a lot of sexual tension in them. There's just, it leaves it to the imagination more. Exactly. Yeah, that's good. And so website? CarrieJacobsAuthor.com. Okay. And then do you have like a books tab on there or something where people can? Yep. Okay. Yep. And then do you also have like your Facebook and all that kind of stuff on there that they can follow? All of my links are right at the top of my website. I am most active on Facebook. Yes. And I have just recently started dabbling in TikTok because why not? Oh, okay. What are you doing on TikTok? Just like random crap. And I have these 2 amazing skeletons for Halloween. So this afternoon when we're done here, I'm actually doing a photo shoot with my skeletons for TikTok. Okay. I saw something. I saw something on Facebook and it said, welcome to my boudoir.
So photo session, and it has the skeleton like in all these positions, and I'm like, oh my God. Good for you. A little embarrassed. Glad my kid's not here standing behind me. Oh, too much fun. Well, thank you again so much for being here. I'm going to put out the offer as I do at the end of every single one. If you have any questions for me or Carrie, drop them in the comments section. We would be happy to help you in any way you want. If there's something you want to learn, we are certainly going to try to get you some information or at least give you a jumping off spot. We have had a blast. I absolutely adore Carrie, and I hope that you will take a chance on her books, because I think you will not only be pleasantly surprised, but seriously entertained. And if you need permission, I do have door hangers that will let your significant other that they will walk the plank if they bother you. So anyway, well, thank you very much. I hope you all have either a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, 3 a.m., whenever you're listening to this. And we will definitely have Carrie come on another time when her next book comes out, because I had a blast.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.